No doubt in the car world, some manufacturers and their performance labels are pairings that are made in heaven. Take Mercedes-AMG for instance and Toyota Gazoo Racing. Well, here's another example, Mini and JCW. In today's video, I've got 3 out of the 5 JCW models available in our market today, and we're going to get to know each of them better shortly. My name is Tariq Azmi and you are watching ChariCars.com. Okay, before we proceed, let me address the elephant in the room, literally and figuratively speaking. As I mentioned in the opening earlier, there are 5 JCW models available on sale in Malaysia, but I only have 3 of them behind me today, and that's because I only have 3 drivers and I don't have a camera big enough to fit all 5 together. Well, what are the other 2? It's none other than the Mini Countryman JCW and Mini Countryman Electric JCW. So in context of the 3 Minis I have behind me, just remember that the JCW label means that these are the very top of the pyramid in terms of performance, and they're very easy to distinguish thanks to their preference for red and black accents, which is a common recurring theme in all 3 cars we have today. So I'm sure at this point some of you are already asking, who is John Cooper and what does he work as? Well, legend has it, it all starts from the Cooper Car Company that operated back in the 50s and 60s, and they used to be a Formula One car constructor. In fact, Mr. Cooper himself was smoking in the same breath as the one and only Colin Chapman, founder of Lotus. Now, I will leave you to go down that Wikipedia rabbit hole on your own, but just remember, now you know what JCW actually stands for and what John Cooper Works actually reflects: high performance machines. So let's get to know our 3 cars better, starting with the most iconic of the lot, that is the Mini JCW. This is essentially the 4th gen Mini 3-door hatch that you and I know and love very much so, but it's been cranked up all the way to 11 in JCW flavor. Now let me also add that amongst this trio of cars we have, this is actually the oldest car of the lot because it uses a carried over platform and retains the carried over powertrain from the previous 3rd gen model, but it has all been renewed and refreshed in this 4th gen iteration with a all new styling to match, but it still retains a very classic silhouette, its classic lines, its classic round headlamps with exclusive JCW touches like the aero kit and the alloy wheels. Overall, it's a Mini. If you love sporty touch to things, you're definitely going to love how the JCW hatch looks like. But if you want something a little bit newer with a charged flavor, you need to look at its other twin. So from the new Mini JCW, we move to the JCW Electric, and well, the obvious difference here is in that word electric, because this car uses an electric powertrain, not a combustion powertrain as what we saw in its combustion twin earlier. And let me also add that whilst the Mini JCW is based on older bones and has an older powertrain carried over, the Mini JCW Electric is all new from the ground up. It has a new platform base, it has a new electric powertrain, and that also explains why it has a lot of subtle visual differences. I mean, essentially, both these JCW hatchbacks are same but different. And now we move into the front half of the cabin, and I've elected to come back into the Mini JCW Electric because I will argue that this all-electric hatchback has all the things that is common in all 3 cars featured today, starting with the central infotainment display, which is a 240mm round OLED display. It's a signature of all new Minis, and it is fantastic because it offers Apple CarPlay, Android Auto, easy and brisk access to all the onboard functions, plus a lot of connectivity functions. I will also add one more bonus. It is paired with a Harman Kardon audio system, something that all 3 cars also share. And I love this Harman Kardon sound system in Minis today. Apart from which, what's also common amongst all 3 cars is the inclusion of a full color heads-up display. And if you notice, another common theme with all new generation Minis is its use of very nice but premium looking fabric upholstery in its dashboard and door inserts. In the JCW's case, all 3 of them get this treated with chili red and black colorway. You also find this very cool looking 2-spoke steering wheel in all 3 cars that feature this very novel fabric 3rd spoke, and being a JCW, this fabric 3rd spoke is done in black and chili red. Apart from that, you also find some signature Mini touches like this center control panel where the ignition switch, drive mode selector and gear selector are. However, there are some slight differences, but what's very evident is the slightly different way of packaging things between the electric and non-electric variants. key amongst which is you'll find that in both the electric JCW hatch and electric Aceman JCW, it tends to package a little more convenience like this. Power adjustable front seats with driver side memory function, but otherwise all three cars share a lot of similar things, even panoramic glass roofs. So from the Mini JCW Electric, move to the third car of our trio, and that is the Mini Aceman JCW. If you don't know what the Aceman is all about, all you have to do is just click here and watch our previous feature video of the regular Aceman. Now, in a nutshell, it is exactly the same treatment as what you find in the JCW Electric, except that in Aceman form, you get a slightly larger, a slightly lifted crossover body form with the added benefits of extra doors, plus a bigger boot space for added practicality. But I like the Aceman in JCW twist as featured better, because it just looks so much more manlier, more angrier. Now moving inside, and let me quickly refresh your memory. With the Mini Aceman crossover, you get the typical crossover benefits and perks of a very large and practical boot space, matched with an extra pair of doors that gives you access to a rather spacious and large rear passenger quarter. Let me also refresh your memory here by saying that life in the backseat of the Aceman is actually very comfortable, and this is all very surprising despite the fact that the Aceman is actually a rather compact and small crossover SUV. Now obviously you can already see that the recurring theme with all three JCW cars we have here is this choice of red and black motif colorways, plus the added exclusive aero kits all three feature, not to forget the exclusive rolling stock that each rolls on, matched with red painted brake calipers with the John Cooper Works branding on all of which. If you want a Mini but you want a sportier, angrier twist to it, this is why the JCW label exists. But sometimes styling isn't just enough, and that is why Mini also makes JCW variants of some of their key models as featured here today. Now let's get to know them better on the inside. Alright, moving into the Mini JCW combustion, and this is easily the most visceral, the most accelerating of the three. Pure combustion goodness, folks. Nothing else can beat that. A lot of that magic stems from a 2-liter turbocharged 4-cylinder petrol engine that develops 231 PS and 381 Newton meters of torque. It drives the front wheels via a 7-speed DCT automatic transmission with pedal shifters. 0 to 100 takes 6.1 seconds, and VMAX stands at 250 km/h. But don't be fooled if you think it sounds slow. The car is actually small, so all that speed actually feels and looks very zippy in real life, and it does feel very zippy too. The handling is fantastic, ladies and gentlemen, because this car is small and light, and the suspension tuning done by the folks at the JCW department is superb to say the least. This is the version of the Mini hatchback that really meets the promise of feeling like a go-kart. The sport suspension and the performance control adaptive dampers are fantastic, ladies and gentlemen. A lot better than what it feels in the electric version, mind you. And honestly, this is the one you want to be in when you're in the mood to carve corners up and down Genting Highlands or the Kanak Highway on the way up to it. The only price you have to pay here, car gets thirsty when you cane it. But when you cane it, it rewards you with the thrill of carving corners with the added magic of a combustion soundtrack and a very nice sport exhaust tune to match. Let me also add that between the three, it's this combustion hatch that boasts the tightest, sportiest ride. However, there's also another price to pay to that. This is also not the most comfortable of the trio, because that sporty ride comes at the price of a very bumpy ride for the daily. But otherwise though, I have very little complaints for the Mini JCW in combustion form, and really this is my favorite of the trio lah. Okay, let's move to driving dynamics, and I like to start with the Mini JCW Electric first, because there's a lot to talk about in this car, despite the fact that it's missing both an engine and the visceral feel of its ICE twin. Somehow or other, I agree with sentiments that the JCW EV feels equally as exciting as its ICE twin, and a lot of this stems from the fact that it has a very peppy powertrain underneath. It has a single E-motor that generates 258 PS or 190 kilowatts if you prefer, and 350 Newton meters of torque. Altogether, this enables 0 to 100 km/h sprints in just 5.9 seconds whilst en route towards a electronically capped VMAX of 200 km/h. Now, I don't know about you, but those are fast enough figures in my opinion. Overall, overall, being electric, it definitely feels quicker and a lot more rapid off the line versus its ICE twin. And I will also add that the other obvious difference here is that it's actually very, very quiet being an EV, and that silence is only broken by the sound of the aircon vents depending on what speed you have it on, or the sound of the artificial engine suites. Take a listen. Now, that artificial engine sound suite is produced by award-winning music composer renowned for sci-fi films, Hans Zimmer. Take that as pub ammo if you will. Overall, the Mini JCW Electric, though it's an EV, it still drives like a proper JCW hatch should. The Mini JCW is juiced by a 54.2 kilowatt hour battery pack, and this grants up to about 371 kilometers of range according to Mini. However, take that range claim with a grain of salt, because it really depends on how you drive this car. And trust me, when you drive a car like this, you want to cane it often, and the price of caning it is you lose range. Moving to the third car of the trio, and it's none other than the Aceman JCW. And despite being bigger than the three-door hatch, surprisingly, the Aceman JCW drives like one. It feels like one, in fact, behind the wheel. Now, underneath, it uses the same e-motor as the JCW electric hatch. Same output, same torque, though 0 to 100 is a bit slower because this is a slightly bigger, heavier car. 0 to 100 km takes 6.4 seconds in this lifted crossover. Despite so, it still feels very agile, very nimble, and it rides a lot better than the hatch as well, I might add, and I guess that is to be expected of any lifted crossover SUV as such. So overall, between the electric hatch and this, I would much prefer to be in this one, even though it's a little bit slower, and some will also argue that it's also a little bit short on range versus the hatch, because this one will only do up to 355 kilometers with a single full charge of the same 54.2 kilowatt hour battery pack it shares with the electric hatch. But do I care? No, because this car is the more pleasant one to be in, and despite its racy goodness, this is a car that I argue that is a lot easier to tame and use for the daily when you want it to be a bit more docile, you know. Nevertheless, don't be fooled. This is still a thoroughbred JCW Mini, and it will deliver the beans when you want it to, especially when you put the driver experience toggle and scroll it all the way up to go-kart mode, and it just rides like a dream, drives like a dream, and it feels like it's ready to carve corners as eagerly as its ice-powered hatchback twin would. So it's pretty obvious to see that all three cars bring very different drive dynamics, but what's unmistakable is the fact that they're all very fast, very sharp, and that is essentially the promise delivered by that JCW badge. And now let's talk price, because ultimately that's what's going to dictate what's your choice and which one to buy, right? Well, let me start with the most obvious of which, the easiest of which is the Mini JCW in combustion form, because this is also the most expensive of the lot at 315,888 ringgit. Let me agree with you that that is very pricey, but I will remind you, to justify that price, this is perhaps one of the last bastions of a dying breed of hot hatches. I don't know if we'll ever see another combustion-powered hot hatch like this in the future, but never say never. If you want similar thrills, similar speed, similar sharp performance, and you don't mind going silently in electric, well, let me highlight that the all-electric Mini JCW Twin is a lot cheaper at 218,888 ringgit. Now, at that price, I'm almost tempted to, and I'm almost willing to forgive the fact that it has short range. But nevertheless, the option is still there. And if you want similar magic, but you want the added benefits of practicality and comfort that comes from a bigger size crossover, well, obviously you have to not look further past than the Mini Aceman JCW, which is also accessibly priced at just 233,888 ringgit. Now, you can find out more about warranties and after-sales options on our website, charicars.com/news. In the meantime, folks, I want to know which of the three would be your pick. If you ask me, well, I'm a classic old school man. I know what my pick would be should budget not be a limitation, and it's definitely the combustion-powered mini JCW. Well, if you don't mind, folks, I want to continue driving this car a little bit more. If you enjoy what we've given you so far, don't forget to like, share, subscribe, and hit the comments below.